Welcome back. My name is Elijah Oenga, and we are having conversations that inspire, conversations that change, conversations that ignite our minds, souls, and hearts. And my guest for this series has been Antonio Raimondi, a man of great stature. He's been a lecturer, he's been president of an NGO in Italy, he's been a mayor in Geita, and for that, kindly watch part one and part two. For today, we would like to have a conversation around aid. Having worked in the NGO space for a long time, I've been asking Antonio, who's a close personal friend, how come aid doesn't work? How come Africa stagnates after all these NGOs that are working across this continent? And today, we would like to delve into that. So, welcome to the show. And Antonio, maybe introduce yourself and give a brief history of how you're here.
Thank you so much, Elijah. Thank you for hosting me in this program. My name is Antonio Raimondi, and I've worked for all my life practically in the development world, so for international cooperation. I've been 5 years volunteering in Latin America. Then in 1991, I became a project officer for an Italian NGO called the VIS, International Volunteer Service for Development. In 1993, I very quickly became the chairman and the CEO of that NGO until 2007. Then for 5 years, I've been a mayor. Then 2012, came back to the work of development, and so today I'm finishing my contract with an Italian NGO working here in Kenya called Friends of Children. So I have this quite long background, 33 years of work in the field of international aid and cooperation, and plus 5 years volunteer. That means 38 years. Means that I have visited for work with projects in almost 40 countries of the world. And I have seen projects, I've worked on projects in Latin America, Central America, Africa, of course, North and Sub-Saharan Africa, in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, because in Eastern Europe, after the fall of the USSR, especially the Balkans, they needed a lot of aid over there too, and Indonesia. Mm-hmm. So of course, more in some contexts, less than others. In Asia, I work, but not that much though, but much more in the Middle East and Africa. In the beginning of the 90s, a lot also in Latin America. Mm-hmm. So I have wide experience. So I've been also teaching project cycle management. Mm-hmm. I've been teaching elaboration and writing of projects. Yeah. I've been teaching development aid policies, etc. Yeah.
Okay. So you have vast experience in the development world. Maybe from that vast experience, are there three projects that come to mind that you would like to share that impacted you and who you are today and how you think today?
Well, the projects were so many. Where I carried on, I think thousands of projects. Really. Some of them were smaller, some of them medium-sized. I'm talking about from a budget point of view. Okay.
Which is one of the biggest projects that you ever worked on?
Well, I worked on a project of 5 million euros with the European Commission for Angola, for example, for the one of the biggest slums of Africa, mm-hmm. called Lixeira. Lixeira in Portuguese means where the all the trash is. Mm-hmm. So it was a slum built on the where all the trash was brought by from the city of Luanda, the capital of Angola. That was a big project in terms of budget, but I think there are projects that I liked a lot. For example, one in Albania. Albania is in Eastern Europe. Albania was an extremely poor country when I went to work there in 1992. But the vocational training center that we set up gave really a possibility to work to many youngsters, many youngsters. I remember a beautiful project going to the other side of the world in the Caribbean islands in Santo Domingo. We worked for the street children. Well, they were the so-called street workers. They were living at home, but they used to spend the whole day on the street, working on the street, and we did a very nice project for them and for their mothers, for the kids and for the mothers, and that was a successful project too. I had a successful project here also here in Kenya. In 1994, my first time to Kenya, I came to evaluate a project in Makuyu. Makuyu was a printing press, vocational training for a printing press, and I came to evaluate it, and it was the project was okay. It was working. It was, but what is incredible to say is that in 2019, after 25 years, I went back to Makuyu. Imagine 25 years later, I went there, and the project was still working exactly like we wrote it, and exactly like it was in 1994. So that was a huge satisfaction for me. That was a tremendous satisfaction.
Because I know the challenge and the complaint has been sometimes that these projects don't work.
They don't work. Most of them, they're spending now money in monitoring and evaluation, and now they even talk about behavioral change. Before, we used to do the projects only with logical framework. It's a technique. It's a technique, okay? But fundamentally, you have an objective, a specific objective of the project. In 2, 3, 4 years, what is the objective that you want to reach? So if you reach, and then at the end you make an evaluation according to the indicators of this logical framework, and then you go through that and you see if you reach the objective through the expected results. You see if the expected results are there, and you match the indicators. Okay, so the indicators help you for the evaluation. But that is the effect of the project. We're not talking about the impact. Come on, guys. You cannot have an impact with a project of $500,000, $1 million, $2 million. What I mean, an impact. An impact. The impact is something that you need in many projects in a certain area, and you need a clear vision with policies, and you have to work with the government together, aside with the government. You have to align the policies of NGOs, of the UN agencies, etc., together with the government. And of course, the government also has to play an active role, not the role of who only wants money, to show the population that they're doing something for them. This is the issue of politics. Politicians always, they need money to show, not only to let me say, to steal and to get some advantages of that money, but for sure they want, they just want these projects to show the people that they're doing something. That's not the way. That's not the way.
In your view, aid, the way it is structured, has effects but not impact. So I'll shoot straight. Does aid benefit Africa, or has aid been a problematic scenario in Africa? Because there's a lot of aid coming to Africa.
Elijah, I think that my colleagues now will tell me, hey, so you just said now, you worked for 33 years, volunteered for 5, so let's say 38 years in this world. You're 60 years old. You started when you were 22. So don't you feel that you failed? So if you're going to say something now negative against aid, my life would have been a failure. Now, the first thing I would like to say to you, to who is watching, and to my colleagues is that no, because I did what I thought it was the best. Not for me, for the others, for the world. At that moment, even today, still I think that there are projects that are valid, that are interesting, that can give some good results to the people. So I'm not completely negative, but sometimes you have to take position. The fact that we do projects, but we don't do any more policies. We don't do any more advocacy and lobby. We don't try to get into the even in a challenge with the governments and say, hey guys, you have to do a different policy. You need that. You need that courage. Sometimes you don't say anything against the government that is hosting you because you're afraid that they can kick you out. I mean, even here, even in the NGO world, in the non-profit organization, you're a non-profit organization, but still money became so important.
Yeah.
It's so important to have projects that probably after a year, 2, 3 years, they're not there anymore. They don't exist anymore.
They
It's
don't
not.
exist,
It's
so
not the project
It
that
was
I've
a
seen.
circus.
Yeah,
All
it is.
that money, all
that,
those cars
yeah.
and man hours.
And that's it. That's
It's a
it.
circus.
It's over. So what I can tell you is, if we take the situation of the world in 1969,
Yeah.
so we see what was the economic situation in 19. Why I say 1969? There's a reason why. In 1969, after the 60s, the UN said they put the UN target, which means every rich country of the OECD, means Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development,
Yeah.
DAC, Development Aid Committee. So they are the 30 richest countries of the world, okay? You have to put 0.7 of your GDP every year, you have to give it to aid and to the poor countries. Okay. So if we go in 1969, we see the situation, and we see the situation of 2023, last year. We have to say, is the economic growth of the south of the world, of the poor countries, the less developed countries, is the scissor? How is the gap? Is it reduced or it's wider? The answer is it's much wider.
For sure.
So at the end of the day, only this data, this one, even because the mainstreaming in development is the economists say you can measure development on the GDP. Is the country growing? Economic growth, GDP. If it's growing, okay, you're doing a good work. If it's not growing, you're doing a bad work. Unfortunately, we also know that economy is not everything. Amartya Sen said human development in 1990. Said human development, so expectancy of life at birth, education, how many boys and girls go to school. So for him, it was to live a long life and a long and knowledgeable life. But for Amartya Sen, poverty is not only the lack of money, of financial resources, but it's also the lack of opportunities. Okay, which is if you think about it,
bigger.
It's even
The
bigger
lack
than
of
that.
opportunities is the bigger.
You can have money, but
Yeah.
you're in the desert. You can do nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, but if you look at all these things, okay, even the political situation, democracy. So many people think, guys, leave it. Democracy is something for the Western world. It's not for Africa. It's not for Latin America. It's not for Asia. No, so which is not true. Which is not true. The issue is, if you want to impose democracy, it doesn't work. It depends. It depends. Democracy is a willing of the people.
The willingness of the people.
Of the people. You cannot come from the U.S. or from Europe and impose, democracy in whatever country of Africa or of the world. So that is the point. So we have countries today that are living with autocracies, people that are elected and re-elected for 30, 40, 50 years. What are we talking about? They're fake dictators. So you have dictatorship, you have autocracies, you have oligarchy. I mean,
it's interesting you brought 1969 because that's the same year I think we as man landed on the moon. Looks like we were on a trajectory of saying, you know what, we got this and we can. But you then bring the Caesar analogy, and we note that the poverty gap has widened even further. Yet we have truckloads of money coming this way to Africa. and truckloads of resources, especially from Congo. Look at Burkina Faso with the French. Um, Sometimes we as Africans feel that there is a cover on the eye with it's almost like someone handing you a candy while they're in your backyard
Well,
shipping your gold.
you're pulling out from my mouth now the title of my next book. I published 4 books in my life. Now, in the coming months, I will be working. I want to try to rest a little bit my eyes, and then I will come to this next book. Probably will be my last. I don't know, but it's gonna be the title is Colonialist and Beggars.
Hmm.
Colonialists and Beggars: The Failure of International Aid for
Hmm.
Development.
Hmm.
Now, the failure, I already said, it's been a failure. At the end of the day, it's been a failure. All this circus, as you said, is there for, the sake of the salaries of the
Hmm.
people working for these,
Expatriates
the
and
UN,
hmm.
the UN people, the people also the NGOs, etc. I mean, at the end of the day, even if sometimes behind them they have goodwill, they have
Hmm.
goodwill. It's not
Yeah.
because they want to be that, but let's go to colonialists and beggars. The mindset. The
Hmm.
issue is the mindset. At the end of the day, why the rich countries of the world, why the Western countries are, why China
Hmm.
is helping these countries. They're helping these countries because their agenda is geopolitical and geoeconomic.
Hmm.
They're not helping you because they love you.
Mm.
They're not helping you because they want you to develop. They don't want you to develop.
Mm.
They prefer that you're
It's a
not developed.
selfish interest
It's selfish
for their
interest.
own
There is,
geopolitical.
it's, of course, every country has, for example, now Italy has, I'm Italian, I will tell you, Italy has the agenda to stop the migration from Africa.
Hmm.
That is we have a right-wing government, and for them now, they want to put some more money in it, but for them, the obsession is nobody has to
Immigration.
move from their
Mm.
villages, from the cities, from those countries, okay?
Hmm.
France, they go for economic reasons. They go for the francophonie. They still think to have their empire. The British have their agenda. The Germans have, above all, an economic agenda. The Americans, well, they're a mess.
The
They're
Russians.
it's the cowboys. The Russians come, to sell their arms and to have, military base. China comes to conquer Africa
Yep.
because they're conquering Africa from now you're buying everything in China because they're cheap because the whatever they sell is very low quality. At
And,
the end,
and this is one of my challenges because we, as Africa and Africans, we end up being consumers. We import a lot. Yet, you find that half of the raw materials that are used
it's
in
from
is
Africa.
from Africa. Is it time that we change the mindset from aid to collaboration, consensus? For instance, instead of China bringing for us finished products or Germans bringing us Mercedes Benz, and we love those cars, I feel Africa is the leading buyer of Mercedes Benz, by the way.
Probably, yeah.
Probably because the tyrants and the leaders who loot end up spending on shiny toys. So, is it that we start making the case for collaboration and saying, hey, enough of the aid, we would like to build together upskilling, innovative centers so that you're not giving us fish? The famous analogy, don't give me fish, teach me how to fish.
Now that is the other part of the title. The Muzungus, let's say, but the Chinese are not Muzungus, but they're even worse than the Muzungus. Be careful. Once again, I'm saying this. The Chinese, because you see, me and you, we are very good friends and we are brothers.
Mhm.
I also married a Kenyan lady, for example, a black lady. So we don't have issues. Do you ever see a Chinese sit with, if it's not a business meeting, watch out, Okay, sit
They
like
don't
a,
integrate
no way,
with your
no
culture
way,
in a
no way,
meaningful
no,
way.
no way, no
In
way.
fact, I am aware that there are some restaurants in Nairobi where it's for only Chinese.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I came to know ultimately that there's a casino in Dar es Salaam that this mall. It's no only the Chinese can get in. It's owned by a Chinese, only for Chinese. So etc. etc. But coming back to the issues, colonialists on one side, we have the mindset to say we have to colonialize you, and on the other side, and yet the mindset was out. Even a person like me, sometimes I confess I'm still on the, if my wife doesn't keep time, I'm still there on, you're the typical African that you don't keep time. And then I don't like to say that. I say, shut up, come on, don't say that, because it is still something racial. It's a stereotype, okay? But it comes spontaneous outside, okay?
I think what we've learned today from our guest Antonio Raimondi, who's worked in many countries in Africa, in Albania, and many countries of Latin America and Asia, is that aid looks good on the surface, but beneath it, it comes with conditions that make impact impossible. We just see the effects of aid, but rarely the impact of aid. Maybe that's not the model for Africa. Is it time that Africans think about skill sets, collaboration, consensus, and look for partners across the globe that can ensure that our young people are learning, growing, and nurturing? Because we have a lot of talent in Africa, whether it's in IT, whether it's in farming, whether it's in theater, arts, sports, and music. This is the direction that we need to take and collaborate with investors who look at Africa as partners and not as an extraction site. The Chinese model has failed, I dare say. They come, extract, and disappear. No wonder we import toothpicks, we import cups, we import shoes, we import clothes, we even import food, a continent that should be feeding the rest of the world. These conversations are hard, sometimes they are raw, sometimes they are difficult, but they are conversations that must be heard. These voices must be heard, and we craft a new model for Africa. Aid is not working. Colonialist mentality is not working. The beggar mentality is not working. It's time for consensus and collaboration. Thank you very much, and hoping you keep listening and viewing this series, because you will learn a lot, and we hope to receive feedback from you, because from your feedback we can also engage with you and give you the kind of content that you're looking for. So we believe in Africa. Antonio believes in Africa. That's why he lives in Africa. And these insights are so critical in decision making. Whether you run a startup, whether you run a small company, it is time to seek collaboration and consensus and partners who can grow this great continent. Thank you very much.